In this tutorial, we really handle all of the branching. So everything up until now has been more of the course setup, very common production process for a lot of different types of courses. But now we'll go ahead and work with slide properties to actually configure the functionality and navigation of the branching. But I also want to do something real quick, and that is I want to create a conclusion screen. So we started off with this intro screen, and then we have each of our content slides, but I actually want to have a place that we can send the learner to once we've completed the course. So if I just duplicate this one and I drag it all the way to the bottom, and I want to make sure I name this, so I'll just call this one conclusion. And maybe we'll do something different to it, right? Just take everyone off right here. We'll change this graphic. Just something to make this visibly different. And we can add people to it or anything later on. So we've added the conclusion screen. So at this point, let's go ahead now and just open up slide properties from the Articulate tab. So slide properties. First thing I want to do is turn and change this navigation from advance automatically to advance by user. So I can click this top column and it automatically selects everything below. So I can choose advance to next slide by user. And that just keeps the player from auto advancing across all the slides. Now the first thing I want to do on this home slide is I want to lock the navigation. The reason being is I want the user, the learner, to have to choose one of these icons. If they just click the next button, then they'll go to the first, in this case, the other track. Well, maybe I want that. So just, you don't have to turn it off or lock it. But in this case, I really want them to choose the job path, the content path that's most specific to their current role. So we want to lock the navigation and ask them to interact with the content slide. So that's the first thing we want to do. We don't want to change any of the branching here because it's going to be locked. So there's nowhere they can go. Now, the next piece, the next part of it we want to do is for the other. So if they do click this other button and they're on the slide, I don't care if they go forward automatically, that's fine. But if they go back, I want to make sure they go back to home. And that's going to happen anyway on this first example, but it's kind of a good practice to make sure that it just goes back to there in case you add additional slides. So in this case, at the end of slide, I want it to go to the next slide, which is fine, but at the previous, I want it to go to home. So I'm just going to select home from the drop down. Again, this is probably more of a cautionary. You don't have to do it on this example since home is the first slide right before it. But for the other three, when they get to this slide, so they're going to click the player to go back and forth. When they get here, I don't want them to automatically go into the next role. In this case, I want them to finish the course. So on this one, I'm going to select at the end of slide. Let me bring that up. I want them to branch to, it's going to be a little bit long. I want you to see it. I want them to branch to conclusion. Okay? So when they get to the end of the slide, they're automatically going to go to the final slide. Now, for the application start screen right here, I do want to set the previous. I don't want them to come back over here into the previous job content path. I want them to actually go back home. So previous button will take them home. Now the forward button can take them all the way through. But once I get to the application end, same thing. At the end of the slideshow, I want them to go to the conclusion, click OK, and the same thing here for the project first screen. So if they come up here and they click Project Manager, they're going to jump all the way down here, but if they second thoughts or maybe they made a mistake and they want to go back, I don't want them to see this screen. I want them to see the home screen again. So the previous goes home, click OK, and the same thing here. When they get to the end of the project, I want them to go forward and then to the conclusion screen. So that's probably the most challenging part. It's really not challenging, it's just keeping the logic straight of where you want it to go. But because it's all form-based, it's really not hard to mess up. It's just thinking about where do you want them to go at the end of each section. And in some cases, you might want them to go into the next section. But in this case, we only want one out of the three content paths to be visible to the learner. That's it. Click OK. At this point, we've set up our course, our navigation, our linking. We're done. We want to customize the player in the next final tutorial just so that we don't have any of the player menus and that we have only the slide view so the learner is actually interacting on the slide level rather than the outline content menu. And we'll see you in the next and final lesson.